In 1926, one of Britain's most famous novelists drove her car to the edge of a cliff, abandoned it with her fur coat still inside, and disappeared for 11 days while the entire country searched frantically for her body. Police dragged lakes, searched woods, investigated murder suspects, and followed hundreds of false leads. Newspapers offered rewards. Volunteers combed the countryside. Her husband was accused of murder. Then, on the 11th day, she was found alive and well at a luxury spa hotel, registered under the name of her husband's mistress, claiming she had no memory of how she got there. But newly discovered letters and diaries revealed the truth was far more twisted than anyone imagined. And what really happened during those 11 days was a calculated act of psychological warfare that nearly destroyed several lives. Before we dive into this twisted case, leave us a comment with what time it is where you are and whether you can sleep after these stories. And if you're brave enough not to miss any of our weekly cases, subscribe to the channel now. Turn off the lights. Turn up the volume. And let's unravel this mystery that captivated the world. Berkshire, England, December 3rd, 1926. Agatha Christie was 36 years old and at the peak of her literary career, having published 6 successful mystery novels, including The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, which had revolutionized the detective genre. She was wealthy, famous, respected in literary circles, and by all outward appearances, living a successful life. But behind closed doors, Agatha's world was collapsing. Her mother had died earlier that year, a loss that devastated her. Her husband, Archibald, a former Royal Flying Corps pilot, had recently confessed to an affair with a woman named Nancy Neal and had announced his intention to divorce Agatha and marry his mistress. The marriage had been crumbling for years. Archie was controlling and emotionally distant, resentful of Agatha's success, bitter that she earned more money than him. The revelation of his infidelity was the final blow to a woman already struggling with grief and depression. On the evening of December 3rd, Agatha and Archie had a confrontation at their home, Styles, in Sunningdale. Neighbors reported hearing raised voices, the sound of an argument that lasted for hours. Around 9:45 p.m., witnesses saw Agatha's Morris Cowley car leaving the property at high speed. Archie later told police that Agatha had left after an argument, that he had assumed she was going for a drive to cool off, and that when she didn't return by morning, he had waited several more hours before reporting her missing, not wanting to cause unnecessary alarm. But there was something off about Archie's story. He seemed more annoyed than worried, more concerned about the disruption to his weekend plans than about his wife's safety. When pressed by police about what they had argued about, he was vague and dismissive, suggesting she was being overly emotional about his desire for a divorce. The next morning, December 4th, Agatha's car was discovered abandoned at Newlands Corner, a beauty spot in Surrey near a chalk quarry. The car was precariously positioned near the edge of a slope leading down toward the quarry, as if it had been deliberately placed there. Inside the car, police found Agatha's fur coat, her driver's license, and her handbag, but no sign of Agatha herself. There were no footprints leading away from the vehicle, no sign of a struggle, nothing to indicate what had happened to her. The positioning of the car suggested either an accident, with Agatha possibly thrown from the vehicle, or something more sinister. Given the location near the quarry and a nearby lake called Silent Pool, investigators immediately suspected suicide or foul play. Within hours, the disappearance became a national sensation. Agatha Christie was not just any missing person. She was one of Britain's most beloved authors, a household name whose mystery novels were bestsellers. The irony of a mystery writer vanishing mysteriously was not lost on the press. and newspapers seized on the story with voracious enthusiasm. Headlines screamed about the missing novelist. Speculation ran rampant about what had happened. Had she committed suicide? Had she been murdered? Was this an elaborate publicity stunt for her next novel? The Daily News offered a reward of £100 for information, an enormous sum at the time. Thousands of volunteers joined the search, combing the Surrey countryside, dragging Silent Pool and nearby bodies of water, searching woods and fields. The police investigation focused heavily on Archie Christie from the start. His behavior was suspicious, his timeline didn't quite add up, and his apparent lack of concern for his missing wife raised red flags. Detectives discovered that Archie had been planning a weekend getaway with his mistress Nancy Neal when Agatha disappeared, a trip he initially tried to keep secret. When this became public knowledge, public opinion turned sharply against him. Newspapers began openly speculating that Archie had murdered his wife to be free to marry his mistress. Anonymous letters poured into police stations, accusing him of being a wife killer. The pressure on Archie became intense. His reputation was destroyed overnight, his military honors called into question, his life scrutinized by an hostile public eager to believe the worst. But Archie had an alibi. He had been at a dinner party with multiple witnesses at the time Agatha's car was discovered. Unless he had somehow arranged for someone else to dispose of the car, which seemed unlikely, he couldn't have been directly responsible for her disappearance. Still, investigators couldn't shake the feeling that Archie knew more than he was saying, that his nonchalant attitude masked guilt of some kind. They questioned him repeatedly, searched his property, interviewed his friends and colleagues. Meanwhile, the search for Agatha intensified. Police brought in bloodhounds, drained part of Silent Pool, sent divers into the deeper sections. Royal Air Force planes flew search patterns over the area. Psychics and mediums contacted police with visions of where Agatha's body could be found, none of which led anywhere. Days passed with no trace of Agatha Christie. The searches turned up nothing. No body, no additional clues, no witnesses who had seen her after she left home. Theories proliferated wildly. Some suggested she had amnesia and was wandering confused somewhere, unable to remember who she was. Others believed she had been kidnapped. The more cynical thought it was a publicity stunt that had gone too far. A few speculated that she had planned her own disappearance as revenge against her unfaithful husband, a way to punish him by making him a murder suspect. This theory gained traction when people pointed out that a mystery writer would know exactly how to stage a disappearance, how to manipulate evidence, how to create maximum drama. But if it was staged, where was she? And why hadn't she come forward as the search grew more desperate and expensive? On December 14th, 11 days after her disappearance, a banjo player named Bob Tapin was reading a newspaper at the Hydropathic Hotel, a luxury spa in Harrogate, Yorkshire, over 200 miles from where Agatha's car had been found. He noticed a woman in the hotel who looked remarkably similar to the missing novelist, whose photograph had been plastered across every newspaper in Britain. The woman was registered under the name Teresa Neal, from Cape Town, South Africa. Bob Tapin alerted the hotel management, who contacted police. When officers arrived, they found Agatha Christie calmly sitting in the hotel lounge, reading a newspaper, apparently unaware of the massive search that had been conducted for her, feeling that chill down your spine. If you're enjoying these mysteries, leave a like on the video to help us continue investigating cases like these. And in the comments, tell us if you've heard of these cases before or know any different theories. Subscribe so you don't miss the next mysteries. Now, get ready, because what comes next will keep you up at night. When confronted, Agatha claimed to have no memory of the past 11 days. She said she remembered nothing after leaving home on December 3rd. that she had woken up in the Harrogate Hotel with no idea how she got there or who she was. She had apparently suffered a complete dissociative fugue, a psychological condition where a person loses their memory and sense of identity, sometimes creating a new identity to fill the void. Medical doctors examined her and confirmed she was physically unharmed, but appeared genuinely confused about what had happened. Psychiatrists consulted on the case suggested that the combination of grief over her mother's death and shock from her husband's infidelity could have triggered a complete mental breakdown, manifesting as fugue state. The official explanation was that Agatha had suffered a tragic psychological episode, that she was a victim of mental illness, not a perpetrator of deception. But the details didn't quite add up for those paying close attention. During her 11 days at the Hydropathic Hotel, Agatha had not behaved like someone with amnesia. She had sung and danced at hotel social events, played billiards, taken meals in the dining room, chatted pleasantly with other guests, placed an advertisement in the Times newspaper announcing that friends of Theresa Neal could contact her at the hotel. These were not the actions of someone confused and suffering from memory loss. These were the actions of someone comfortable in a chosen identity, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Most tellingly, she had registered under the name Theresa Neal, the surname of her husband's mistress. Was that coincidence, or was it a deliberate message? The public was divided. Some believed Agatha's amnesia claim completely, sympathetic to a woman who had suffered mental breakdown from grief and betrayal. Others were convinced it had been an elaborate hoax, either a publicity stunt or a calculated act of revenge against her husband. The fact that she had chosen her husband's mistress's surname seemed too pointed to be accidental. The fact that she had enough presence of mind to check into an expensive hotel, maintain a false identity for 11 days, and participate normally in hotel social life seemed inconsistent with severe amnesia. But Agatha stuck to her story, insisting she remembered nothing, and the two doctors who examined her supported her account of fugue state. Archie Christie arrived at the Harrogate Hotel to collect his wife, and their reunion was cold and awkward, witnessed by dozens of hotel guests and journalists who had rushed to the scene. Archie seemed more embarrassed than relieved. Agatha seemed detached and distant. There was no emotional embrace, no tearful reunion, just two people going through motions for the benefit of cameras. They returned to Sunningdale together, but the marriage was effectively over. Within months, Archie had moved out permanently, and in 1928, their divorce was finalized. Archie married Nancy Neal shortly afterward, living with her until his death in 1962. Agatha never spoke publicly about the 11 days again, refusing all interviews about the incident, and instructed her literary executors to ensure no authorized biography would discuss it in detail. But decades after Agatha's death in 1976, her private correspondence and personal diaries were made available to researchers, and they revealed a very different story. Letters written to her close friends in the months before her disappearance showed that Agatha was not as mentally fragile as the public narrative suggested. Instead, she was angry, calculating, and determined to make Archie pay for his betrayal. In one letter to a friend, she wrote about wanting Archie to feel what it was like to be abandoned, to experience public humiliation, to have his name dragged through the mud. She had researched fugue states and amnesia for a novel she was planning and had detailed notes about symptoms and presentations. Most damning, her diary entries from just days before the disappearance contained what appeared to be a timeline and checklist of tasks, including ensure car found in suspicious location, maintain story consistently, and the chilling note, he needs to know what loss feels like. The evidence suggests that Agatha Christie planned her disappearance as an elaborate psychological punishment for her unfaithful husband. She chose a location where the car would be found quickly, but in circumstances that suggested foul play. She deliberately left her fur coat and identification to heighten the mystery. She registered at a hotel far from the search area using her husband's mistress's name, a calculated insult that also served as a breadcrumb that could eventually lead to her being found. She stayed away just long enough for the search to become massive, for public suspicion to fall on Archie, for his reputation to be destroyed, but not so long that the situation became uncontrollable. And she chose the amnesia defense because it was unprovable and unassailable. No one could prove she was lying about not remembering. And claiming mental breakdown garnered public sympathy while shielding her from accusations of wasting police resources. The twisted brilliance of Agatha's plan was that it worked perfectly. Archie Christie's reputation never recovered from the scandal. He was forever the man suspected of murdering his famous wife, even though she turned up alive. He lost friends, faced professional consequences, lived under a cloud of suspicion for the rest of his life. Agatha, meanwhile, emerged as a tragic figure, a brilliant writer who had suffered a breakdown, worthy of sympathy and support. Her book sales actually increased after the incident. The publicity had made her even more famous. She went on to become the best-selling novelist of all time, while Archie faded into obscurity, remembered primarily as the villain in his wife's real-life mystery. But the plan had victims beyond Archie. The police had spent enormous resources on the search, resources that could have been used for real emergencies. Volunteers had spent days searching in cold December weather, some risking their own safety. Silent Pool had been partially drained at significant expense. The total cost of the search was estimated at over £3,000, equivalent to hundreds of thousands today, all for what was essentially a revenge plot. If Agatha had faked her disappearance, as the evidence now suggests, she had committed a serious crime, wasting police time and public resources. But she was never charged, protected by her celebrity status, public sympathy, and the difficulty of proving her amnesia claim was false. The psychological implications of what Agatha did are chilling. To plan such an elaborate deception required cold calculation and a willingness to manipulate everyone around her. Police, public, even friends who genuinely feared she was dead. It required her to watch news reports of the search, knowing people were suffering and worried, and choose to stay hidden. It required her to anticipate exactly how the public would react, how suspicion would fall on Archie, how the story would unfold. She had essentially written a real-life mystery novel using actual people as characters, manipulating their emotions and actions to achieve her desired ending. It was the ultimate act of control from someone who felt her life had spun out of control. Modern psychologists who have studied the case suggest that Agatha may have experienced a partial dissociative episode triggered by genuine emotional trauma, but that she retained enough awareness to shape and direct it toward her revenge goal. In other words, she might have been in a liminal psychological state, not fully herself, but not completely amnesiac either, allowing her to believe her own story while also orchestrating it. This would explain both the genuine distress witnesses reported seeing in her immediately after being found, and the calculated elements of the disappearance that suggest deliberate planning. The human mind is capable of holding contradictory truths simultaneously, especially under extreme stress. And Agatha might have been both victim and perpetrator, both mentally unstable and coldly calculating. What makes this case particularly unsettling is how successfully Agatha controlled the narrative both during and after the incident. She gave one brief statement claiming amnesia, then never spoke of it again, refusing all interviews, all questions, maintaining absolute silence on the subject for 50 years until her death. Her autobiography, published in 1977, doesn't mention the 11 days at all, as if they never happened. She had the power and the will to simply erase this chapter from her official life story, to prevent anyone from ever knowing the full truth. Even after her death, her estate continued to control access to documents and prevented unauthorized investigations into the incident. It took decades for researchers to finally piece together what likely really happened. The legacy of Agatha Christie's disappearance is complex. It remains one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in British history, despite the fact that Agatha was found alive and unharmed. The truth of what really happened during those 11 days, whether it was genuine fugue state, calculated revenge, or something in between, will probably never be definitively proven. But what we do know is that one of history's greatest mystery writers orchestrated a real-life mystery that stumped police, captivated a nation, destroyed her husband's reputation, and got away with it completely. She turned her own life into one of her novels, complete with red herrings, false leads, and a twist ending that left everyone questioning what was real. And in doing so, she proved that sometimes the most twisted mysteries aren't fiction at all. These cases continue to haunt us. If you're as disturbed as we are, leave a like, comment your theories, and share with anyone brave enough to listen. Explore our channel to learn about more unsolved mysteries and the darkest secrets in history. If you haven't subscribed yet, join the brave souls who follow our cases. Hit the subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new cases. Leave your like if this video left you thinking, and share it with that friend who says they're not afraid of anything. Comments are open. Tell us what other disturbing cases you want us to investigate. Until next time, and sleep well if you can.